The cold woke him first, then the pain. Daniel Cole opened his eyes slowly, and for a moment, he did not know where he was. His head hurt badly, and his left arm felt like fire was running through it. He tried to move, but his body did not want to listen. Then he felt it. Warm breath on his face. Something soft and warm pressed against his chest. Daniel blinked, trying to clear his vision. The world was dark around him, but there was a faint glow coming from somewhere close. He looked down, and his heart nearly stopped. 3 small creatures were curled up against him. They were about the size of cats, but they were not cats. Their bodies were covered in beautiful scales that shimmered between blue and silver. They had small wings folded against their backs and long tails that wrapped around each other. Their eyes were large and amber-colored, and they glowed softly in the darkness of whatever cave or shelter he had ended up in. Dragons. They looked like tiny dragons. One of them lifted its head and looked directly at Daniel. It made a soft chirping sound, almost like a question. The creature's scales shifted color slightly, going from blue to a warmer purple. Daniel could feel something strange, like a gentle touch against his mind. It was not words, but feelings. Curiosity, concern, something that felt almost like relief. Daniel remembered now. The shuttle, the malfunction, the planet spinning toward him as alarms screamed in his ears. He was a lieutenant and exobiologist stationed at the research outpost on Verathos Prime. He had been doing a routine survey of the Northern Territories when everything went wrong. He must have crashed. He must have been thrown from the wreckage. And somehow, he had ended up here. The 3 little creatures watched him with those glowing eyes. They had kept him warm through the night. Daniel understood that much. Without their body heat pressed against him, the cold of this alien night might have killed him. "Hey there," Daniel whispered. His voice came out rough and broken. "Thank you." The creature closest to his face made another chirping sound. Its scales flickered with colors blue, then gold, then a soft pink. Daniel had studied many alien species, but he had never seen anything like this. The colors seemed to mean something. They seemed to be communication. He tried to sit up, and pain shot through his body. He groaned and fell back. The 3 creatures moved with him, adjusting their positions so they could stay close. The smallest one crawled up onto his chest and pressed its head against his chin. Daniel felt that mental touch again, warmth, comfort, safety. "Okay," Daniel breathed. "Okay, I get it. Rest first." He lay there in the darkness, surrounded by these strange and beautiful creatures, and he thought about his situation. His emergency beacon was probably damaged in the crash. The outpost was hundreds of kilometers away. Rescue could take days or even weeks. He was alone on an alien world with a broken body and no supplies. But he was not truly alone, was he? These 3 little beings had found him. They had chosen to stay with him. They had kept him alive. When morning came, pale green light filtered into the cave. Daniel could see better now. The cave was small but dry, and the entrance was partially hidden by hanging vines. A good shelter. The 3 creatures stirred as the light grew stronger. Daniel studied them more carefully. They were definitely reptilian, but there was something more to them. Their eyes held intelligence. Real intelligence. Not the simple awareness of an animal, but something deeper. Something that understood. The largest of the 3 stood up and stretched like a cat. It was about the length of Daniel's forearm, with scales that were more blue than silver. It looked at Daniel and made a series of quick chirps. Then it turned and walked toward the cave entrance, looking back as if waiting. "You want me to follow you?" Daniel asked. The creature chirped again. Its scales flashed gold briefly. Daniel forced himself to sit up. The pain was terrible, but he pushed through it. He checked his arm and found that it was badly bruised, but probably not broken. His head wound had stopped bleeding at some point during the night. He would survive if he was careful. The smallest creature, the one that had pressed against his chin, climbed onto his shoulder. It was so light he barely felt it. It made a soft purring sound near his ear. Daniel smiled despite everything. "Okay, little one, let's see what your friend wants to show me." He crawled out of the cave and into the morning light of Verathos Prime. The sky was a pale orange color, and two small suns hung low on the horizon. The landscape was rocky and covered with strange, purple plants that looked like a mix between trees and mushrooms. The largest creature was waiting for him. It started walking, moving slowly so Daniel could follow. The second creature, medium-sized, with scales that were more silver than blue, walked beside Daniel, occasionally looking up at him. They led him through the rocks and plants for about 10 minutes. Daniel had to stop several times to catch his breath. His body was weak, and every step hurt. But the creatures waited for him patiently each time. Finally, they reached a small stream. The water was clear and looked clean. Daniel understood immediately. They had brought him to water. He knelt down and cupped the water in his hands. He drank deeply, and it was the best thing he had ever tasted. The creatures watched him with what looked like satisfaction. Daniel sat back and looked at his three companions. He needed names for them. He could not keep thinking of them as the largest one and the smallest one. "Ember," he said, pointing to the largest. Its scales seemed to glow a little brighter. "Ash," he pointed to the medium one with the silver scales. "And you," he reached up to touch the smallest one on his shoulder. "Flint." The three creatures made happy, chirping sounds. Their scales flashed with bright colors. Daniel felt a wave of warmth and acceptance wash over him through that strange mental connection. He did not know how long he would be stranded here. He did not know if rescue would ever come. But he knew one thing for certain. He was not alone. And somehow, these three little dragon brothers had decided that he belonged with them. Daniel looked up at the alien sky and took a deep breath. He would survive. He would find a way. And he would protect these creatures who had saved his life. That was what humans did. They adapted. They survived. And they never forgot a kindness. The little dragon brothers gathered around him as he rested by the stream. And for the first time since the crash, Daniel felt something like hope. 7 days had passed since the crash. Daniel Cole had learned many things in that time. He had learned which plants were safe to eat and which would make him sick. He had learned where to find water and how to build a fire that would last through the cold nights. But most importantly, he had learned that Ember, Ash, and Flint were far more than simple animals. They were intelligent, truly intelligent, and they were teaching him how to survive. On the third day, Daniel had tried to eat a fruit that looked like a purple apple. Flint had jumped from his shoulder and knocked it out of his hands. The little creature had made sharp, worried sounds, and its scales had turned a deep red color. Daniel understood the warning. He did not touch those fruits again. On the 5th day, Ash had led him to a hidden grove where soft, edible moss grew in thick patches. The moss tasted strange but filled his stomach. Daniel had hugged the medium-sized dragon brother and felt a wave of happiness flow through their mental connection. The brothers communicated through colors, sounds, and emotions. Daniel was learning their language slowly. Red meant danger or warning. Gold meant happiness or approval. Blue was calm and peaceful. Purple seemed to mean curiosity or question. And when all three brothers made their scales glow pink at the same time, it meant something like love or deep affection. Daniel spent hours each day working on his communicator. It had been badly damaged in the crash, but he was an engineer before he became an exobiologist. He knew how machines worked. Slowly, piece by piece, he fixed the broken parts. On the 7th day, he finally got it to send a short burst of data. Just a few seconds of transmission before it died again. But those few seconds contained his location and a simple message. Alive. Stranded. Send help. He did not know if anyone had received it, but he had to hope. That evening, Daniel sat by his fire with the brothers curled around him. Ember lay across his lap, enjoying the warmth. Ash was pressed against his side. Flint was on his shoulder, as always. The little one seemed to have claimed that spot as his own. Daniel pulled out the small notebook he had found in his emergency kit. He had been keeping a journal, recording everything he observed about the brothers and their behavior. "You know what I've realized?" he said softly to his companions. "The research outpost has you classified as non-sapient fauna. They think you're just animals. They're wrong." Ember lifted his head and made a questioning chirp. His scales flickered purple. "I'm going to prove them wrong," Daniel continued. "I'm going to document everything. Your language, your intelligence, your culture. Because you have a culture, don't you? You have family and memories and feelings." The three brothers made soft sounds. Daniel felt a complex wave of emotion through their connection: gratitude, sadness, something old and heavy like grief. He had learned that the brothers were orphans. Their mother had been killed by something they called the Krell. Daniel had seen the images in his mind when Ember shared the memory. A massive predator with black scales and two many teeth. The brothers had been alone for months before they found Daniel. Now they had each other. A strange family made of one human and three dragons. As the days turned into a second week, something changed. Daniel noticed that someone was watching them from a distance. It was larger than the brothers. Much larger. The size of a horse, perhaps, with scales that shone like silver in the sunlight. Daniel only saw glimpses of it, a flash of movement on a distant rock, a shadow moving through the purple trees. But he knew it was there. The brothers knew too. They did not seem afraid, but they were cautious, respectful. When Daniel asked about the Watcher, Ember shared a feeling with him: ancient, powerful, important. "An elder," Daniel whispered. "One of the adults of your kind." Ember's scales glowed gold in confirmation. Daniel understood. The elder was watching him, testing him, deciding if he was worthy of trust. He did not try to approach the Watcher. Instead, he focused on proving himself through his actions. He shared his food equally with the brothers, even when his own stomach was empty. He stayed awake for 3 nights when Flint became sick with some kind of fever, holding the little creature close and keeping him warm. He protected them all when smaller predators came near the camp, using his knife and his fire and his human cleverness. On the 15th day, Daniel managed to send another burst of data. This one was longer. It contained his notes on the brothers, their communication system, their problem-solving abilities, their emotional complexity. He hoped that someone at the outpost would read it and understand. Dr. Kevin Park was a xenolinguist at the research station. He was brilliant and open-minded. If anyone would recognize the truth about the Varath, it would be him. Daniel sat under the alien stars that night and talked to the brothers about Earth. He described the blue oceans and the green forests. He told them about cities filled with millions of humans. He explained how his people had reached for the stars and found worlds they never imagined. The brothers listened with glowing eyes. Daniel felt their wonder and curiosity through the connection. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know about this strange, scaleless creature who had become their family. Ember shared something in return. Images flowed into Daniel's mind: ancient cities made of crystal and stone, great dragons flying through purple skies, a civilization that had flourished for thousands of years. Then darkness, destruction, fire falling from the sky, and finally silence. The Varath had once been great. Their civilization had fallen to some ancient catastrophe. Now they were few, scattered across the planet, slowly rebuilding what was lost. And Ember, Ash, and flint were special. Daniel felt it in the images. They were the last of an important bloodline, the last hope of their people. Daniel pulled the brothers closer. "I won't let anything happen to you," he promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The brothers made their scales glow pink. Daniel felt their love wrap around him like a warm blanket. In the distance, hidden in the shadows of the purple trees, the elder Virith watched. And for the first time in many years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The scaleless one had proven himself. He had shown kindness and courage and love. He had earned the right to be called brother. Now she only had to wait and see what would happen when his people came for him. Would they be worthy too? Or would they destroy everything, as so many others had done before? The elder settled down to watch and wait. The future of her people might depend on what happened next. 3 weeks after the crash, Daniel heard the sound he had been waiting for. The distant roar of shuttle engines cutting through the orange sky. Rescue had finally come. He stood up from his camp, waving his arms above his head. The brothers gathered around his feet, looking up at the metal bird descending from the clouds. They were curious but cautious. They had never seen human technology before. The shuttle landed in a clearing about 100 meters away. Daniel walked toward it, and the brothers followed him. They would not leave his side. 2 people stepped out of the shuttle. The first was a woman with short dark hair and kind eyes. Her uniform marked her as a pilot specialist, Amy Torres. The second was a man in a corporate suit that looked completely wrong for this wild planet. His name tag read Captain Marcus Webb, Nexus Corporation. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Nexus Corporation. He knew that name. They were a mining company, one of the biggest in the galaxy. Why was a corporate captain on a rescue mission? Amy ran toward Daniel with a medical kit in her hands. "Lieutenant Cole, thank God you're alive. We received your transmissions. Are you injured?" "I'm okay," Daniel said. "Bruised and tired, but okay." Amy noticed the 3 creatures at Daniel's feet. Her eyes went wide. "What are those?" "They're called Virith," Daniel said. "And they saved my life." Captain Webb walked over slowly. His eyes were cold as he looked at the brothers. "Virith, the native fauna. They're classified as non-sapient animals." "That classification is wrong," Daniel said firmly. "They're intelligent. They communicate through colors and emotional projection. They have language and culture and memory. They're sapient beings." Webb smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "That's an interesting theory, Lieutenant. But Nexus Corporation has already been granted mining rights to this planet. The survey showed no intelligent life. The project will proceed as planned." Daniel felt ice run through his blood. "Mining rights? What are you talking about?" Webb pulled out a tablet and showed Daniel the documents. Nexus Corporation had claimed Verathos Prime for resource extraction. The operation would begin in 6 months. They planned to strip mine the northern territories exactly where the Virith lived. "You can't do this," Daniel said. "There are intelligent beings here. They have rights." "Non-sapient fauna have no rights under galactic law," Webb replied calmly. "And I'm afraid your opinions don't change the legal classification. Now, shall we get you back to the outpost? You've been through a difficult experience." Daniel did not move. Ember pressed against his leg, and he felt the little creature's fear through their connection. The brothers understood enough. They knew that this cold man wanted to destroy their home. "I'm not leaving without them," Daniel said. Webb raised an eyebrow. "The animals?" "Lieutenant, be reasonable. They're not animals." "And they're coming with me?" Amy stepped between the 2 men. "Captain, maybe we should discuss this back at the outpost. The lieutenant has been stranded for 3 weeks. He needs medical attention and rest." Webb considered this for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Bring the creatures if you want, Lieutenant. But this matter is already decided. Your attachment to them won't change anything. They flew back to the outpost in tense silence. Daniel held Flint in his arms while Ember and Ash sat pressed against his sides. Amy kept looking at them with wonder in her eyes. Webb kept looking at them with cold calculation. At the outpost, Daniel was taken to the medical bay. Dr. Nina Reyes examined his injuries and declared him healthy enough, considering what he had been through. She also examined the brothers, with Daniel's permission, and her eyes grew wider with each test. Their brain activity is incredible, she whispered. The emotional resonance, the color communication. Daniel, if what you're saying is true, this changes everything. I know, Daniel said. And I have documentation. Weeks of observations and notes. Dr. Park has been receiving my transmissions. Dr. Kevin Park arrived minutes later. He was a thin man with glasses and an excited energy that made him talk too fast. Lieutenant Cole, your data is extraordinary. The linguistic patterns alone suggest a complex language system. This could be the discovery of the century. But their excitement was cut short by Captain Webb. He entered the medical bay with Commander Lisa Grant, the leader of the research outpost. We need to discuss the situation, Webb said. Lieutenant Cole is claiming that the Verith are sapient beings. This claim, if accepted, would halt the entire mining operation. Commander Grant looked at Daniel with sympathy, but also with worry. Lieutenant, are you sure about this? Captain Webb has suggested that your time alone in the wilderness may have affected your judgment. Daniel stood up straight. My judgment is fine, Commander. These creatures are intelligent. They have saved my life multiple times. They have shown me kindness and love and loyalty. They are not animals to be displaced for corporate profit. Strong words, Webb said coldly. But words don't change legal classifications. Unless you can provide definitive proof of sapience proof that would stand up to a formal review, the mining operation will proceed. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He lay in his quarters with the brothers curled around him, thinking about what he could do. He had the documentation. He had the support of Dr. Park and Dr. Reyes. The Webb had power and money and legal authority. Then, in the darkness, something happened. The door to his quarters opened silently. A massive shape moved through the shadows. Daniel sat up in alarm, but the brothers made soft, welcoming sounds. It was the elder V. Wrath. She was beautiful and terrifying. Her scales shone like silver moonlight, and her eyes glowed with ancient wisdom. She was as tall as Daniel when she raised her head, and her presence filled the room with power. She looked at Daniel, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. He saw the full history of the Verith people, their rise, their fall, their slow recovery. He saw the brothers and understood their importance. They were the last of the royal bloodline, the descendants of the greatest Verith leaders. The future of their people depended on them, and he saw what would happen if the mining began. Destruction, death, the end of everything the Verith had fought to. Rebuild. The elder projected one final image into Daniel's mind. It was Daniel himself, standing between two worlds. A bridge, a protector, a brother. Daniel understood. The Verith were placing their trust in him. In humanity, they were betting everything on the hope that humans were good enough to do the right thing. Daniel reached out and touched the elder's scaled face. I won't let you down, he promised. I'll fight for you, whatever it takes. The elder made a sound that was almost like a purr. Her scales glowed warm gold. Outside the outpost in the darkness of the alien night, the first Krell scouts began to circle. They had smelled blood and weakness, and they were hungry. The real battle was about to begin. The Krell attacked at dawn. Daniel was in the outpost cafeteria when the alarm started screaming. He grabbed the brothers and ran to the observation deck. where Commander Grant and the others were already gathered. Through the reinforced windows, they could see them. Dozens of massive black-scaled predators with too many teeth and claws like curved knives. They were circling the outpost, testing the perimeter defenses. What brought them here? Commander Grant demanded. Dr. Park was pale with fear. They must have followed the elder Vareth. She came to the outpost last night. The Krell hunt Vareth, their natural enemies. Captain Webb was already on his communicator, calling for military support. But help was hours away. The outpost was a research station, not a military base. They had basic defenses, but nothing that could stop a full Krell assault. Then Daniel saw something that made his blood run cold. The Krell were not just circling randomly. They were being led. One massive creature stood at the back of the pack, the Krell Alpha. It was twice the size of the others, with scars covering its black scales and eyes that burned with cruel intelligence. Ember trembled against Daniel's leg. Through their connection, Daniel saw the memory again, the Krell Alpha tearing apart the brother's mother. This was the same creature, the one that had made them orphans. "I have to go out there," Daniel said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "Are you insane?" Webb demanded. "Those things will tear you apart." "The elder Vareth is out there somewhere," Daniel said. "She came to warn us, and now she's trapped outside the perimeter. I can't leave her. I can't leave her." Commander Grant shook her head. "Lieutenant, I can't authorize," but Daniel was already moving. He grabbed the plasma rifle from the emergency weapons locker and headed for the exit. The brothers followed him without hesitation. "Cole, stop!" Webb shouted. Daniel turned at the door. "You want proof that the Vareth are intelligent? That they're worth protecting? Watch me." He stepped outside into the orange morning light. The Krell noticed him immediately. Several of the smaller ones turned and began stalking toward him. Daniel raised his rifle and fired, dropping the first one with a shot to the head. The others scattered, then regrouped and came at him from different angles. Daniel moved through the rocky terrain like a man possessed. His military training kicked in fire, move, take cover, fire again. The brothers stayed close, their scales flickering with warning reds and combat golds. He found the elder Vareth crouched behind a large boulder, wounded and exhausted. 3 dead Krell lay around her. She had fought well, but there were too many. She looked at Daniel with surprise and something that might have been gratitude. "Can you move?" Daniel asked, knowing she could understand him through their emotional connection. The elder projected an image her leg was injured. She could not run. "Then we stand here," Daniel said. Together. The Krell Alpha stepped forward from the pack. It was enormous, easily 3 meters tall, with muscles rippling under its black scales. It looked at Daniel with something like amusement. What could one small human do against the king of predators? Daniel handed his rifle to the elder. "Point and pull the trigger," he said. "I'll handle the big one." He drew his survival knife, the same one he had used in the wilderness. It looked tiny compared to the Krell Alpha's claws. The Alpha charged. What happened next became legend among both humans and Vareth. Daniel Cole, armed with only a knife, faced down the most dangerous predator on Varethos Prime. He dodged the first swipe of those massive claws by centimeters. He rolled under the snapping jaws. He used the terrain, the rocks, the obstacles to stay alive second by second. The brothers helped. They could not hurt the Alpha directly. They were too small, and their fire breath was too weak. But they could blind it. They could distract it. They darted around the creature's legs, spitting small flames at its eyes, pulling its attention away from Daniel at crucial moments. Daniel saw his opening. The Alpha lunged forward, jaws wide, and Daniel dove underneath it. His knife found the soft spot between the scales of its throat, and he pushed with every bit of strength he had. The Alpha roared, a sound of pain and rage that echoed across the landscape. It thrashed wildly, throwing Daniel against a rock. He felt ribs crack. Darkness flickered at the edges of his vision, but the knife had done its work. The Alpha stumbled, blood pouring from its wound. It fell to its knees, then collapsed. The other Krell fled. Without their leader, they were just animals again, dangerous, but without purpose. They scattered into the wilderness. Daniel lay on the ground, barely conscious. The brothers gathered around him, making frantic sounds. The elder Vareth limped over and looked down at him with ancient, knowing eyes. She placed her massive head against his chest and projected something into his mind. It was a healing warmth, flowing through his body, knitting together broken bones and torn flesh. It was old magic, the same power that had built the ancient Vareth civilization. It was nearly lost now, used only in the most important moments. And this moment was important. The elder was marking Daniel as bonded, a sacred connection that had not been formed with an outsider in 10,000 years. When Daniel opened his eyes again, the pain was gone. He sat up slowly and found himself surrounded by Vareth. Not just the elder and the brothers, but dozens of others, adults and young ones, who had been hiding in the wilderness. They had come to see the human who had killed the Krell Alpha, the human who had fought for them. The elder raised her head and made a sound that rang across the landscape. The other Vareth answered, a chorus of calls that seemed to shake the very air. Commander Grant and the others had watched everything from the observation deck. Amy Torres was crying. Dr. Park was typing furiously on his tablet, documenting everything. Even Captain Webb was silent, his face pale with shock. When Daniel walked back into the outpost, the elder Vareth walked beside him. The brothers rode on his shoulders and in his arms. And behind them came the entire Vareth delegation, the first formal contact between their species and humanity. Daniel stopped in front of Commander Grant. He was covered in blood and dirt, but his eyes were clear and strong. Still think they're just animals? He asked. Commander Grant stared at the gathered Vareth, at the obvious intelligence in their eyes, at the way they stood with dignity and purpose. No, she said quietly. No, I don't. Webb stepped forward, his face hard. This changes nothing. The legal classification is wrong, Daniel interrupted. And I'm going to prove it. I'm going to take this to the ethics board, to the Earth Alliance, to anyone who will listen. These beings have culture. They have history. They have feelings and families and hopes for the future. They deserve protection. The elder Vareth stepped forward and looked directly at Webb. She projected an image that everyone could feel, not just Daniel. It was a vision of two possible futures. In one, humans and Vareth worked together, building something new and beautiful. In the other, there was only destruction and regret. The choice was humanity's to make. Webb swallowed hard and looked away. For the first time, his confidence seemed shaken. Daniel turned to the gathered humans and Vareth. We have work to do, he said. Let's get started. 6 months had passed since the battle with the Krell Alpha. The world had changed in ways that Daniel Cole could never have imagined. He stood on a hill overlooking the valley, where the new settlement was being built. Human structures and Vareth nests stood side by side, a patchwork of two cultures learning to live together. Engineers from Earth worked alongside Vareth builders. Children from the research families played with young Vareth in the purple-shaded groves. The sound of laughter and chirping calls mixed together in the morning air. Ambassador Daniel Cole. That was his title now. The first human ambassador to the Vareth people. It still felt strange to hear it. The fight had not been easy. After the battle, Daniel had sent his complete documentation to the ethics board on Earth. Dr. Kevin Park had added his linguistic analysis. Dr. Nina Reyes had submitted her medical findings. Amy Torres had provided video evidence of the Verith delegation and the battle itself. Captain Webb and Nexus Corporation had fought back hard. They had lawyers and money and powerful friends. They claimed that Daniel was suffering from psychological damage. They said the Varith had manipulated him somehow. They insisted that the mining operation had to proceed, but they had underestimated humanity. When the videos reached Earth, people watched. They saw Daniel fighting to protect the Elder Varith. They saw the brothers standing with him against impossible odds. They saw the Varith delegation approaching the outpost with dignity and hope. And they were moved. Millions of people signed petitions demanding protection for the Varith. Scientists from around the galaxy offered their support. Politicians who had ignored alien rights issues suddenly found themselves under pressure. Admiral Corey Flynn arrived with an Earth Alliance patrol vessel to investigate. He was a hard man, a military commander who had seen many worlds and many conflicts. But when the Elder Varith projected her memories into his mind, showing him the rise and fall of Varith civilization, showing him their hopes for the future, he was changed. Admiral Flynn invoked Earth Alliance. Protocol 7. Any species demonstrating clear sapience must be granted protected status pending full evaluation. The mining operation was halted immediately. Director Howard Briggs, the regional overseer who had approved the project, was removed from his position. Captain Webb was recalled to Earth for a formal inquiry. The evaluation took 3 months. Teams of scientists, linguists, and ethical specialists came to Varithos Prime. They studied the Varith language. They documented their culture. They interviewed Daniel and the brothers and the Elder, who had chosen the human pronounceable name Seraph. In the end, the conclusion was unanimous. The Varith were a sapient species with full rights under galactic law. Varithos Prime was designated as a protected cohabitation world, the first true partnership between humans and an alien civilization. Now, 6 months later, Daniel watched the fruits of that decision grow. Ember, Ash, and Flint were not so little anymore. They had grown to the size of large dogs, their scales shining like polished copper in the sunlight. Their wings had developed properly, and they could fly short distances. Soon they would be able to soar through the orange skies like their ancestors. The 3 brothers approached Daniel on the hilltop. Ember landed first, folding his wings with practiced grace. Ash and Flint followed close behind. They gathered around Daniel like they always had, pressing against his sides and shoulders. Some things had not changed. Some things never would. "Look at this place," Daniel said softly, gazing at the settlement below. "6 months ago, I crashed here alone and scared. Now look what we've built." Ember projected an image into Daniel's mind, a memory of that first morning in the cave, when Daniel had opened his eyes to find 3 small creatures keeping him warm. The memory was tinged with love and gratitude. "I know," Daniel said. "I remember too." Elder Seraph approached from behind. She moved with grace despite her great size, her silver scales catching the light of the twin suns. She had become a regular presence at the settlement, a bridge between her people and the newcomers. She stopped beside Daniel and looked out at the view. Through their bond, he felt her emotions, pride, hope, and something like peace. "The prophecy spoke of this moment," she said. Her voice came through the mental connection, translated into words and feelings. "When the Scaleless One bonds with the last of the royal blood, a new age begins." Daniel shook his head. "I'm just a man who did what was right. The brothers are the ones who saved me." Seraph made a sound like gentle laughter. "You still do not understand. The prophecy was not about what you would do for us. It was about what we would do together, human and Varith. 2 peoples who should have been strangers, becoming family." The brothers chirped in agreement. Their scales glowed with warm colors. That evening, a ceremony was held in the settlement's central plaza. Representatives from Earth and from the Vareth people gathered to sign the final cooperation treaty. Cameras broadcast the event to billions of viewers across human space. Daniel stood at the front of the gathering with Elder Seraph and the three brothers. Commander Lisa Grant read the terms of the treaty: mutual respect, shared resources, protection for both peoples. When she finished, Daniel and Seraph pressed their hands together, sealing the agreement. The crowd cheered. Vareth and humans alike celebrated this moment that would change the history of both species. Later that night, Daniel sat alone on his favorite hilltop. The brothers were curled around him as they always were. The stars filled the sky above, more beautiful than anything he had ever seen on Earth. "You know," Daniel said quietly, "there are billions of humans out there, spread across hundreds of worlds. Most of them will never meet a Vareth." Flint climbed onto his shoulder, his favorite spot, even now that he was almost too big for it. The young Vareth made a questioning sound. "But they've seen you," Daniel continued. "They've watched the videos. They've read the stories, and maybe, just maybe, they've learned something. About kindness, about connection, about what it really means to be human." Ember raised his head and looked at the stars. He projected an image: countless worlds, countless species, all of them waiting to be discovered. The universe was vast and full of wonders. "Yeah," Daniel agreed. "There's so much more out there. And I think we're going to find it together." Ash nuzzled against Daniel's arm. The three brothers' scales all glowed pink at the same time, that color that meant love and deep affection. Daniel smiled and pulled them close. He remembered waking up in that cold cave, confused and afraid, to find three small creatures keeping him alive. He remembered the warmth of their breath on his face, the glow of their eyes in the darkness. His eyes had opened to warm breath and scales. The little dragon brothers had been waiting for him, and somehow, against all odds, they had found each other. "Thank you," Daniel whispered to the brothers, to the stars, to the whole universe that had brought them together. Ember, Ash, and Flint pressed closer. Their warmth surrounded him. Their love filled his heart. Above them, the twin sons of Varathos. Prime began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. A new day was beginning. A new age had begun. And humanity, for once, had done something truly worth being proud of.